is Annie Griffin, your host, and we're in Colville, and today is the Tri-County Economic Development meeting where the commissioners from 3 counties decide the fate of our economy here, and we're going to be discussing what is going on with our forests. They're being cut down, as you can see from this shot. Hopefully our hills are becoming barren. And anyway, one of the participants that have come here today to sit in the audience and just let the commissioners know that they agree with what some of the public is saying is Alice. Alice, why are you here today?
Well, I just want to do my part in preserving our beautiful forests, and I want to be sure that we're not contributing to what is happening to our forests by responsible logging practices.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have you noticed any change since you've lived here?
I've seen a lot of clear cutting that is disturbing me and concerning me, yes. Yes.
And you've said you've been here about 12 years. You've moved up here from California, was it?
Well, no, actually, Eastern Washington. I live in Spokane, yes.
Oh, okay,
yes.
in Spokane. So you moved up here. And so what about the smoke? Has this always been this way?
No, no. The fire season is starting so much earlier, and it's so much worse. And I just want to know what's causing that, and I want to understand it.
Now you'll see a logging truck going by, and you'll notice the huge big trees that they're cutting now. And those are the protectors of our forests from forest fires, because they don't burn like the little trees do. So there's no protection here from our county officials, and they intrude on property rights by saying property owners cannot build any more than 1 house and 1 garage on a 20-acre parcel or a 5-acre parcel. And to me that's good because it stops overgrowth, but they have not done anything to make sure that our forests are protected, and that's what we're here for. Okay, so Joe, why are you here today?
Oh, I'm interested in our forest system here, trying to preserve it.
Great, great.
And what have you.
Okay, well, thanks for being here.
Okay.
They say that every person that attends a meeting represents 500 people that couldn't come but feel the same way. So you represent 500 people.
Okay, that's great.
You're seeing in 2016, this is Hancock Sustainable Lumber Practices, right over a fish-bearing stream. And I filmed this for her, and I predicted in that video that Waits Lake would flood the following year, which it did the following spring. Okay, so dear commissioners and all other interested parties, I thank you for your work in advising the Colville National Forest to become better stewards of our resources and forests. You have helped them come a long way in better management practices, and that is why I stand before you today. I have been a resident of Stevens County for 20 years. I came to this area in '94 and bought a 40-acre forested parcel of land. I thought this was one of the best kept secrets in the world, undiscovered by exploiters of our forests. Butterflies still populated our world, and bird song was everywhere. Since then, I think we have all witnessed a foreboding taking of forest on private lands. The forest practices rules are disregarded, in my opinion, by the DNR and the Department of Ecology in favor of allowing big timber corporations such as Hancock Forest Management to exploit private land ownership. They buy up private timberlands and cut them, leaving, as you can see, a desert, a massacre of what was once a living, breathing world that contributed to the quality of our air, water, rainfall, and reduced fire damage. I produce a TV program called Meet America, and we air on cable networks in Monterey, Spokane, Santa Barbara, the World Wide Web, as well as the largest independent TV network in the world, Liberty Beacon Television. And I'm airing ongoing what is happening to our forests here in Stevens County. What you are seeing on the screen here is Red Marble Mountain Road above Waits Lake, logged in 2016. This land is part BLM land, privately owned land, and state land, according to the DNR representative that accompanied me that day. Below is a fish-bearing stream, and the buffer zone are the 3 trees left standing, which you will see later on in this video. And the stream is right across the road right here, and they're logging. The DNR representative told me it was all legal. I predicted in this video that Waits Lake would flood the following spring, which it did, but no one seems to take notice of the link that logging on steep slopes would create such a hazard. The value of our forests, both public and private, cannot be underestimated. For example, trees sweat. It's called transpiration. Transpiration, the water cycle from USGS Water Science School, and I quote, it's very important to know, 1 large tree can lift up to 100 gallons of water out of the ground and discharge it into the air a day. 1 large tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. Now, the water evaporated from trees cools global climate, researchers find. This was done in a study, Carnegie Institution, September 15th, 2011. The new research concluded that evaporated water helps cool the earth as a whole, not just the local area of evaporation, demonstrating that evaporation of water from trees and lakes have a cooling effect on the entire atmosphere. These findings have major implications for land use decision making. This is where you come in. These findings have major implications for land use decision making process. I know we're all very sensitive about our private property, so I want to address that a little. Let's talk about private owners' rights. It's a big issue in our county and an excuse used to fillet our forests by companies that come here, buy out private forest lands, and clear cut them. What about the harm done to forest owners next door? Do we have any rights as to the harm of erosion and runoff and flooding and increased heat cycle these clear cuts bring to our nearby properties and private forests we're trying to protect? Do we have any rights to the water we use from our springs and wells, rivers and lakes being contaminated by aerial spraying and the health hazards these chemicals perpetuate upon all wildlife, all insect life, and upon ourselves? Do we have any rights concerning the fire hazards clear cutting brings due to the lack of evaporation cycle those cut trees can no longer give to the forest as a whole during summer months? Do we have any rights concerning the fact that more of our county is clear cut, the more fires and devastating smoke inhalation from those fires we must breathe? It is a fact that large trees protect forests from devastatingly hot fires, yet I see logging trucks taking away old growths by the hundreds daily, and I hope you will note that. Stevens County planners zoned private property owners back in 2007 that property owners with 20-acre parcels or 5-acre parcels could only build 1 house and 1 garage on their property. That was a real intrusion on private property rights, but it was done to prevent the overexploitation of building too many houses on private land. If they can do that, they can certainly better zone forest management practices on private lands to protect all of us from the taking away of our surrounding forests. We must protect our county from overexploitation of privately owned forests, just as the planners protected our county from the overexploitation of building too many houses on their land. Deforestation plays many roles in the flooding equation because trees prevent sediment runoffs and forests hold more water than farms and grasslands. The flood equation is simple. If a river cannot handle the load of water it is required to carry, it will rise above its banks, and this is when floods occur. This is how a single tree can actually help in reducing the effects of flooding. First, some rainwater Now you can see that's right below a fish-bearing stream, but according to DNR, that's okay. And he did say that the slash below represented absorption of water so it wouldn't get in the fish-bearing stream. And there was 3 trees for a buffer zone. So here, what do these trees do? They stay, when the rainwater comes, it stays on the leaves and evaporates into the atmosphere, number 1. Second, its leaves reduce the impact of raindrops on the soil, which causes less soil erosion. Third, its roots absorb water from the soil, making the soil drier so it can absorb more rainwater. And finally, the roots of the tree hold the soil in place, reducing the movement of sediment, which can reduce the capacity of river downstream from breaking its banks. The release of sediment due to deforestation has a bigger impact on floods. The eroded sediment will not only choke rivers, but will also cause mud flow that is much more destructive than normal flood water. Now here you are seeing the most recent Hancock. They bulldozed that spillway up there at Klein Meadows Road. The Department of Ecology doesn't know anything about this. And then they sprayed a buffer zone of about 50 feet between and said that that was okay. And so this is the kind of violations that we are experiencing here that need to be addressed. So what I would like to ask the commissioners today to do is, these are the negative effects of clear cutting. Since all trees transpire water throughout the day, let's do a rough calculation here. One average tree sweats through its leaves around 100 gallons of water a day. An average acre of forest holds about 100 trees of different sizes. If one average tree evaporates 100 gallons per day times 100 trees, that calculates to about 15,000 gallons of water per day that cools the forest surrounding, moisturizes the forest, and provides rainfall, which we're losing because the more clear cuts going on around the world, the more droughts, the more fires. Trees create rainfall. That's why in deserts you don't have much rain. It's a fact. This in turn helps local farmers produce their crops. A major misnomer is that clear cuts decrease the amount of water taken up by trees that could lend more water to streams and lakes as runoff. Nothing could be further from the truth. Trees create rain through their evaporation cycle. They evaporate what they drink. That is why there is so little rain in deserts. So just 1 acre of clear cut diminishes the cooling effect upon our surrounding forest, diminishes rainfall, increases temperatures in the soil that have been measured up to 22 degrees higher, and thus increases our risks of fire. And in conclusion, I ask that you use whatever influence that you have to gently persuade Hancock and other timber industries to listen to the guidelines you helped make for the Colville National Forest. This means there will be no more clear cutting. There will be no more pesticide. There will be sustainable logging for sure, not this kind of what Hancock calls sustainable logging practices, where they just come in and clear cut the whole area. Now, they must leave the big trees that evaporate more water than the smaller trees, and they do not burn like the smaller trees, thus protecting our forests from forest fires. Too much evaporation from those clear-cut forests are lost during our summer months. This cannot be reiterated enough. If they don't, then I advise that you and everyone concerned here go through the county zoning process under the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Guide, Section E, and update zoning regulations to include better forest management practices under Stevens County Land Use Plan, which is to be updated in 2020. We have, for the last 3 summers, and I've been here 20 years, the smoke has stayed here. The fires are staying here. It's only going to get worse. It's up to us to protect our forests now because these big, big timber companies are coming in here and they're taking it all. And they're going to be gone and they're going to be leaving us with this, more and more. And I know we love the beauty, the incredible beauty of this area. So I hope you'll do what you can. Thank you so much for listening.
Here, here.
Thank you, Lorna.
Yes.
Any other comments? Questions for Lorna?
I would like to ask one. You're representative with DNR?
But I don't represent
Okay.
regulatory,
Okay.
so
All right.
I'm kind of treated like any other landowner.
Guess who showed up looking for their babies? The adult otters. My friend went into tears. I mean, this is what's happening to the wildlife that is dislodged and dislocated by the clear-cut logging. Yes, some forage is created for deer later, but the immediate effect is dislocation, disbursement, loss of habitat, and death, basically.
Pick huckleberries up above this area, and I was shocked when I went through there a couple summers ago and saw the devastation and the moon dust and the cedar trees that had been cut down, beautiful cedar trees, which I thought was illegal. The berry bushes, many of them were destroyed, which of course affects the bears and the deer and the other animals that eat the berries. So it really was quite, sad. And the slash piles were pushed into the creek, the little creek that runs along the road, and it was just, I haven't even been up there since because it was just too devastating. And I was just shocked that they were allowed to do that kind of damage. So I hope that something is done about it.
Any other comments?
I came through when Forest Capital owned it. I bought my property 14 years ago, and I'm down on Limekiln Hill, north of Springdale, about 2.5 miles. And when Boise sold the contract to Forest Capital, the back of my property was the 1,400 acres that stretched from me to Springdale had been uncut for 30 years. So it actually was starting to grow back. We've got a creek that runs down Jetson Road that runs from East Jump Off Joe, that runs all the way down. It actually starts on the other side of the 395. The summer that I bought my property in September, Forest Capital came in and cut 39.5 acres directly above me. It's now called the Bald Knob because there's nothing that survived it. What they left back there, everything died. All the saplings, all the little firs, everything died. The topsoil has been washing into my property line since. In 2008, they came back and did it again, cut the next 39.5 acres. I guess it's 39.5 acres you don't have to replant. At least that's what I was told by loggers that were up there cutting it. They were local Springdale, and I actually know the guys that were doing it. And they said that it was going to get sold, and it got sold to Hancock. Hancock came back and cut it again. That's 3 times in 12 years. They cut the same piece of property. There's nothing alive up there. It's literally dust is blowing off the top of it. The rocks are coming back out. The topsoil, I don't know how much topsoil it's lost, but it's lost quite a bit in the last 14 years. A couple of statistics. According to the latest studies, Google Earth, we have cut, as a species, we have cut half the world's forests down in the last 9,000 years. Half of it. Half of it's gone. We're all enjoying the weather and the smoke and everything else, I'm sure, but the latest figures from the observatory in Hawaii is saying that we are now sitting at 410 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere. That's from our addiction to fossil fuels. We know this. Trees mitigate what we're doing. We're a fossil fuel civilization. There's been 22 civilizations that have come up on this planet, chronicled by anthropologists. We're number 23. All 22 of previous civilizations have collapsed due One reason: deforestation, loss of ecological viability. Most of them, we've got nothing but ruins. The Mayans, the Romans, everybody chopped everything down. They used up all their water. They used up all the topsoil growing, and suddenly civilizations just can't do it. We now have what they're calling climate change. That's really a misnomer term. We change babies' diapers, we change our tires. Changing the entire atmosphere of the planet to a state that we haven't seen in 2.2 to 5.5 million years ago. 410 parts per million hasn't been seen since the Pliocene era. That's 2.2 to 5.5 million years ago. They had forests in the Arctic, what we call the Arctic. There were boreal forests and alligators living up there. The forests that we have left, we shouldn't be cutting them down, we should be planting, because that's one of the few things that actually absorb CO2 out of the atmosphere. The oceans are full. The oceanographers are now saying the oceans are starting to release CO2 back into the atmosphere because they can't absorb anymore. 80% of the CO2 that we've released since the dawn of the industrial age 200 years ago has been absorbed by the ocean. They're now overstocked. We're losing, the oysters can't even grow shells out on the northeast Washington or northwest Washington coast because the oceans are acidifying from the CO2.
I find your information enlightening, but in light of the fact that I do have a schedule I have to keep us on, we're already 40 minutes into the next operation,
okay.
So I'm going to have to move on to our next topic.
I just wanted to throw a couple things out. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
So with that, our next one is the Bulldog Project, and I believe.
Hi, I'm Seal Morgan. I own this 8-acre piece of property in Stevens County, and I'm up against a property owned by Hancock Lumber, who used to be
Hancock Forest Management.
Hancock Forest Management, who used to be Forest Capital Partners. This property was completely covered with nothing but knapweed and nothing else, because Chinese knapweed doesn't allow any other plants to live around it. I let loose Chinese knapweed weevils in 2008, and everything grew back. You should have been here this spring. Wow. Amazing amount of wildflowers. Wow. But we're going to walk this way. It's through my property line on the east side, on the ridge line that goes up behind me, and they cut right down to the ridge line. So this is what the property above me used to look like. Okay. In 2004, and then they cut it in 2008, and then they cut it, Hancock came back and cut it in 2012. So. Okay, and I want everyone to know that Hancock, on its website, you can go to Hancock Forest Management. They boast that they are a sustainably harvesting company, and you're going to see throughout this video their sustainably harvesting. You're going to. It's an alternate world when you walk through my tree line onto their property, as you will see very shortly. Okay. So let's walk on this way. Mm-hmm. Right now we're following a deer trail. I've got whitetails and moose that come across this property. And my dogs, of course, who's walking through in front of us. So you can see this beautiful forest. I would say these trees, what, are 80 years old? Well, these are the bigger firs and ponderosas that are here are probably in the range of 40 years old. Okay. So I'm actually taking you to the corner, the southeast corner of the property. It has the biggest and oldest red fir on the property. Okay. Hancock came through, or their boys came through and chopped a hole in it, changed the property lines, and said that the tree is actually on their property line. So I've got a big hole in the bark and red spray paint.
Well, how do you know, how does Hancock prove to you that it's not your property?
Well, for the last 14 years, Forest Capital has been walking through, and I've walked with the woman that does it. She comes through with the compass, and the flags are all still up from the last 14 years of it being done. Maybe once every 3 or 4 years they come through. Hancock moved it 50 feet in and said, this is where it is now.
So they could be taking...
They were not surveyors.
Okay, so are you going to be able to do anything about it?
I'll find out next week when I make a phone call.
These are the big trees Hancock's after.
This is what they're after right there.
Yeah. See, and folks, when they cut these big trees, these are the trees that
This is the tree that seeds the firs everywhere in the area.
Yeah. Beautiful seed trees. And not only that, they sweat something like 250 gallons of water a day, which means they moisturize the forest. This is an ancient tree.
This is a big tree.
Are they going to cut this one?
Well, the property line they've got sprayed is right here. The old property line is where that dead tree is. Property line is.
Okay, so Hancock has just done that to this tree, and so it's sort of saying this is where the new property line is?
Yep. And then right there, that dead tree that's hanging off, that's where the old flags are.
So,
running north.
Okay.
So we're going to, if you'll walk up this way.
Yes. I just want to talk about a little bit about this tree here. This tree probably perspires daily, folks.
Oh, yep.
250 gallons of water a day. That translates into millions of tons of water a year. And they don't burn. These trees do not burn like the little trees
like
that you see there.
You see on the film. All of this is burnable.
Yeah, very burnable.
My stepdaughter was a Forest Service firefighter, and her husband still is. And she walked through this property and said, you need to cut this, you need to cut this, you need to cut this. So I've slowly been doing it, but one old surfer dude can only do so much a summer, and it's been too dang hot and smoky to work.
Well, we have got to tell we've got to buy from the timber industries that are cutting the small trees and leaving the big ones, and Hancock Forest Management is not one of them, folks.
Well, that's the new property line. The yellow flag and the metal poles they've got sticking up. The property line used to be 50 feet up on top of the hill.
So they're taking your property, you feel?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's just another equation, folks. They figure, you know, you're too poor to fight them in court.
Which they're correct, I am.
Well, you can just stand up in front of a judge and say, Judge, I believe this is my property and I think they need to prove it since they're the cutters.
And as you come up the hill to where the property line used to be, you get to see the knob.
Okay.
Well, up here, where you can see the sign right here, which I need to put a screw back in it.
Property line, yeah.
This is where the property line has been since I bought the place. That's where they say the property line is now.
Why don't you talk to Hancock and tell them this?
They aren't interested. They say that's the way the all they say on the phone is, well, you're going to have to do so. You'll have to talk to so-and-so, and you'll have to talk to so-and-so, and it's a runaround.
Well, that's what you got to do. You know?
They're rather unavailable.
Yeah, well then you go to their office and you stay there until you get somebody, because if you don't, they're just going to, you know, if you don't prove, what is it, 9/10 of possession is the law?
Oh yeah.
So if they can get away with cutting this and saying it's their property, then, and you're not doing anything about it, and you haven't proved that you've tried to do something, it is theirs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, you can see.
I'll come with you, Seal. I'll come with you.
Shooting again down there. Everything up here used to look what my property line looks like.
With the big trees?
But the big trees were everywhere.
Wow.
These aren't the big trees. The
No,
big trees
no.
are gone.
Yeah.
And you notice all the saplings, all the small stuff?
Yeah.
Everything's dying.
Yeah, of course.
It's too dry. It's too
Yeah,
hot.
that's right.
There's no protection from the bigger trees.
Not only, and there's no moisture coming from the bigger trees.
Nope. And if you'll notice the soil,
Wow.
it's dust.
Yeah. And so, did they replant?
Nope. I didn't replant, but my Springdale High School retired biology teacher neighbor talked Forest Capital not to spray. Because he was a retired biology teacher, and he went in and said, don't spray, because their property abuts mine, and they would have got the overspray also.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to walk up to the top of this hill here,
Okay.
and you'll get to see the bald knob.
Okay. Okay.
So?
Yeah.
This all used to look like my property with the big trees.
Wow.
And this is all they left.
Well, these trees are about 25 years old. Some of them. Looks like the little ones maybe
lucky,
10.
lucky if they're 10.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched them grow, but this is all, there's nothing up here that'll survive a fire. All the only big tree that's left, you can see it right here.
Right.
That's the only couple of big trees that are left.
And that's not even a big tree, that's a medium one.
Yeah, it is. It's not, it's maybe 80 feet.
Yeah.
And 80 foot tall. These trees are supposed to be 200 feet, 205 feet, up to 215. Red firs, ponderosas, everything grows to 200 feet up here.
Yeah.
And
behold.
Yeah.
So they're taking down Washington, folks, and selling it to China. You can see in the distance, you can see the clear cutting that's going on, the balding. If you fly over Washington, you can see clear cuts from one end to the other.
Turn this way. Come over here. Look at what they've done across the valley.
Wow.
See the couple of, looks like a gap tooth guy got his teeth knocked out up there.
Is that Hancock there?
I assume they seem to be the ones that are doing all of it.
Yeah, if it's private property, they're buying up and leasing private property, and then they're just, and the private property owners think that they're selling to a sustainable timber company, because that's what they say on their website, that they care about the environment. But that's how they care, folks.
Well, if you go up there, where they've got the trees hiding the ridge to make it look like not so bad, it's a little bit smoky today, but you can see the squares underneath coming down.
Wow.
That there's nothing but slash. All it is slash.
Now that's Hancock for you. It's sustainable timber harvesting. You can see here another example. It's a crime. It's a crime against all of us, folks, because this represents rainfall that they're taking away. And the big trees perspire and sweat much more than little trees, and they keep the forest moist.
Well, if you look at the dirt up here on the top of the little ridge.
Yes, look at it.
It's
dry as a bone.
Dry as a bone.
And look at all those little trees are already dying.
Yep, I've watched them die for years now. I mean, the firs, most of the firs can grow only so high before, if they don't have shade, they end up, if they get bigger like that, they die from the top. And when you lose the top of the tree, the tree's dead.
That's right.
It will never grow. It will never grow from that point, and it'll slowly die down until there's just that, and then that'll die.
Right.
Well, I've watched this happen. I mean, in there, right there, right over there, right there, right. I mean, everywhere you look, there's trees dying up here.
Well,
they cut all the big trees down. Every one.
I know. Well, you know something? My goal in showing this to folks is for folks to get an idea of the calamity that's happening, and we need to encourage companies that really are sustainable and don't cause slash and only take small scrub trees that are dying and sickly. And we've got to save this little area. that's what we need to do before it's too late, because in 50 years there just won't be anything left. And it's up to us, each one of you. So folks, if you're listening to this, please start using straw bale, start using cob, that's straw and mud. Look on the internet, look on YouTube and see all the alternative building products that are out there, from plastic bottles to glass bottles. They're beautiful, and you're legally allowed to build that way. So please consider that. And we also need to bring in, you know, sustainable timber harvesting, and that has to be the rule of the law.
Would look like running up that hill.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's going to stop it.
Nothing.
Those are the biggest trees on that part of the hill.
Yeah.
Are over there, and they're 60,
Yeah.
70, 80 feet. They'll torch. They'll
Well, this
absolutely torch.
Hancock is actually making our area a fire hazard.
Yeah, you can't log your way to fire
Yeah,
safety.
yeah, no.
Doesn't work. Unless you cut
yeah.
everything down.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you still end up with weeds.
That's right, yeah. So,
Biodiversity, this isn't.
no.
This
Yeah, yeah, what a shame. It's tragic, it breaks my heart.
I watched them do it. They actually cut this in the winter. I've got pictures of them in their cats going up and down in the wintertime in the snow, cutting, you know, they grab the tree,
Yeah,
the
I've seen
blade
it. It's
cuts, they
hideous.
pick the tree up and
Yeah.
they lay it down and they go to the next
I know.
one.
It's
They did it in the
hideous.
winter. There's
Yeah,
everything's frozen. Nothing
I know.
heals in the winter.
no.
Sustainable. I love that term. It's got so many meanings.
Sustainable for them.
Yeah, bank account.
Yeah.
Gabby, come.
Now, Hancock Forest Management is part of a investment company, folks. So please do look up on the internet, the research, and don't invest in that company. It's all we can do, and not buy from them. And you know, if you have any time, call Home Depot and say, are you buying from Hancock Forest Management? Are you buying from those industries? And if they say yes, say, well, why are you doing that? Aren't you doing your research? And that's what I'm doing, folks. I'm actually coming out to their areas and filming it. So they can't say that I'm lying.
Gabby, hurry up.
So they cut all the big trees, folks. And they're going to do it all over Washington.
Gabby, come.
So
You can see my property line. The biggest trees, it's a line of them right
yeah.
there.
And that's what you've been able to save, and this is how all this area used to look before Hancock got a hold of it.
Yep.
Well, good for you.
And
what are you going to do with this property once you go? Have you got these trees protected?
It depends on what my stepkids.
Oh, I wouldn't leave it to
both
your...
of them are Forest Service firefighters, so we'll see.
Well, why can't you make stipulations, make it a park? That's what my friend did. She made hers a park, Wells Park.
I haven't thought about it.
Yeah. You want me to get you in a hold of her so she can tell you how she made hers a park?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Okay.
Let's keep walking back down this way.
All right.
Bone dry.
Yeah. And look at all this vegetation is
Bone dry.
dry, because when you have large trees, they're perspiring and they cause a dew-like effect, and they literally water the grasses in the morning and in the evenings and during the night.
Well, the second part of that is that larger trees don't allow this kind of undergrowth to come up.
Right.
They shade the ground, which keeps this, and it keeps the ground moist and humus.
Yeah.
But when you've got no overcoat, everything grows weedy and then dries out because all the moisture goes.
Yeah.
So you end up with tinder.
Yeah.
So this above my property is tinder.
And it's threatening your property too, you know?
Oh yeah. Look at the dead
But
line.
they don't care. Huh?
Look at the dead line of trees
Wow.
underneath mine.
Wow.
You see those?
Yes.
They're all dead right up to my property line, all the
Wow.
small stuff.
Yeah. Look at that.
Including that one,
Yeah.
which actually died 2 years ago.
Wow. Now we're coming into this
See that sign right there?
Uh-huh.
Is that on?
Yeah.
Oh, I won't say what it says then.
Okay, so now you see underneath here.
Where everything's still green.
Yeah.
All the leaves are green.
Yeah.
The bushes are green because it's got
Yeah.
it's got overcoat. It's
And moisture.
feel the difference in
Yeah.
your hand. Put your hand out. You can feel the moisture
Yes,
in the air in here.
That's right, yeah. And I need to remind everyone, folks, that this moisture rises and causes a low cloud cover. That's from Carnegie Institute. They now believe that the trees actually help the global warming situation all over the world. So our particular area up here in eastern Washington with our millions and millions of trees, we are actually contributing to the world health of the whole planet. You know what I want to figure out, Seal?
What?
I want to figure out how much moisture in terms of tons a year these forests provide in acreage, you know?
Well, it depends on how many species of trees, different trees you've got. It depends on how big they are, how much ground that the forest cover actually protects from the sun and from the drying effect.
Well, you average it out, you know what I mean? And you always are conservative in your numbers so that you please those naysayers that want to say that they don't do anything. And it's still billions and billions and billions of tons of water a year. It has to be. So see, folks, how green it is in here and lush compared to where we just were. And where we just were, it all looked like this. So this is a much less prone fire hazard, even though you had the small trees. Now, a sustainable timber company would come in here and it would take the smaller trees out and leave all the big trees, and they would take those branches off, and they wouldn't have slash piles, because slash piles are a big problem here in eastern Washington and everywhere, because they are a fire hazard as well.
My quad track.
Now this is Hancock claiming that this is their territory. All new stakes, right?
Yep, everything's new.
But the old property line, which even Boise Cascade respected.
Yeah, the original owners of the property was 50 feet that way.
50 feet that way. So they're just coming in and taking people's property.
Yeah, the old flags are actually, the old flags are still out there.
Well, you've got to go to Hancock and point that out. Because you see, they've got these boys coming in that don't even know what they're doing. And then that's their excuse. Well, you didn't claim it, so it's ours now.
Yep. And
oh, it goes more towards your property.
Yeah.
They're going to take your whole forest.
Look.
Hey, they're planning
They're
to take
taking this whole thing.
They're planning to take your whole forest away.
Yep. The angle,
Wow.
And it goes straight north.
Wow.
This is their new angle.
Oh,
and the
my
old property
God.
line, like I said, is 50 feet that way. And there's still flags in there. If you walk through the thicker part,
Yeah.
you'll see where the Boise Cascade people
Well,
tied
let's
it
see
up.
it. Let's see it. You got it? Let's see it. I'd like to see where the Boise Cascade.
I gotta remember where I saw the last flag. Turn that off for a second. Look that way.
Okay, so this is
new-
Hancock's
that's
new
the new
claim
line.
that this is their territory. And this is the old flag of the original surveying that was done. So I think you've got a case here.
Right here. This is what Forest Capital, the last time the woman walked through with her compass and flagged. This is one, obviously it's one of the old flags because it's rotting, it's plastic.
Right.
But this was the property line.
Well, I hope you're going to
You think I'm going to fight it? You betcha I'm going to fight
and
it.
I'll fight it with you and everyone else too.
This is baloney.
This is stealing, theft.
Sure, but my biggest tree on the property is now on the property line, half on their property. The big fir that you first
Right,
filmed.
yeah. Well, you're going to have to stand there and say you're going to have to cut me in half
Well, they aren't going
with
to
a
like that.
big chain around you.
I teach martial arts.
Yeah, well,
Don't grab me.
that won't stop them. But a big chain and several people here to witness what's going on. And let's just show how mean-spirited this Hancock sustainable forestry is to its property owners.
Yeah, to the ones that are on the other side of their property
That's
line.
right, yeah.
Well, I said, "Are you guys surveyors?" They went, "No, but they told us how to do it."
Oh my God, that's, well, see, that's stealing.
Of course it is.
That's stealing.
What corporations do all the time.
Yeah, well, they think they can get away with it.
They get away with it.
They
almost
do.
all the time. That's the
Well,
problem.
I know. Well, this is what's becoming of America. All the greatness, all the beauty is just being destroyed and crunched up. And it's basically the avarice American habit of building with wood. And then we mourn when our houses burn up. Do you know when I was down in Santa Rosa witnessing that fire?
You were there when Santa Rosa burned?
Afterwards. And I went through the neighborhoods, and the only thing that was standing was the chimneys.
Yep.
So
that was it.
get a hint, folks. Build with stone, with cinder block, with straw bale, with...
If I would have had the money to build the house I would have wanted on this property, it would have been a 3-foot thick straw bale like the people at Hog Farm built.
Yeah.
When Susie and her husband built their new house back in, they must have started it in the late 90s. It was all straw bale with these big thick
They're
walls.
beautiful.
It was incredible.
It's beautiful. And
was
it looks
kind
so
of
good.
Flintstone-y, but it was still cool.
Oh, but it was beautiful. You know, it's kind of Adobe-like.
Didn't need
it's,
air conditioning.
Yeah, didn't need air
Didn't need much heat.
No. That's what, and it'll give the farmers a good livelihood. And it's cheaper than wood at this point.
Oh boy, is it. That's why Hancock's butchering. They're making money.
Yeah,
If lumber prices crash, they'll quit doing it.
yeah.
You go
Well, they're selling to China and all these other places. Japan.
with 1.5 billion people over there, yeah, they need a lot of wood. They
Yeah.
pretty much cut most of their forest down.
Yeah.
I guess the western side of China is now turning into a desert.
Yeah. When will we learn, folks? Let's save Eastern Washington.
I mean, at least I still have a few big trees out here.
Yeah.
But the little ones,
Look at that beauty you got right there.
ponderosa. Most of these
Wow.
are ponderosas.
Yeah.
I've got the young firs like this one right here. I've got
Well, this just goes on and on. Beautiful.
my last words here at my property. And this is an article that came out 2 days ago on counterpunch.org online. What Future Awaits the Babies of 2018 by an author named Gregory Barrett. The blissful obliviousness of today's new parents. Some of you will hate me for what I am about to write. I'm quite accustomed to it. It used to be acceptable to ask questions about what future can be expected for children brought into our world now. This world, with its increasingly grim environmental prognosis. At one time, the bleak forecasts were mostly about extreme heat and pollution. Present projections involve far more. Oceans acidifying at dizzying speed and full of microplastics which have now entered the food chain, possibly massive methane eruptions from underneath polar ice caps which are melting at a phenomenal rate, water wars driving mass migration which in the future will dwarf anything we have seen so far. The list goes on. But instead of making the debate about children and population growth more relevant than ever, oddly, most of what was once known as the left now considers the subject taboo. Lefties galore, just like the right-wingers, will now tell you that everyone has the right to have children, and no one should be shamed about it. Many also assert that our planet can easily support 2 or 3 times its current number of humans, 7.4 billion, if we only do such and such, all pitch in and do this or that, which we certainly will not do. If we as if we had the right anyway to keep wiping out other species faster and faster to make that even theoretically possible. The truth, from my perspective obviously, is that however horrifying the forecast for a planetary future becomes, almost no one wants to admit that it is that bad. The decision to have children is widely considered to be a human right. Even many of us who accept the likelihood of these dire environmental scenarios want to believe that it will all work out somehow, that technological solutions will be developed, that humans can adapt to anything. But above all, many of us who don't yet have children consider a life without children somewhere in our future to be a tragic and horrifying thing to contemplate. Our genetic and cultural programming is so strong that we will go to almost any lengths to convince ourselves that things are not that bad yet. And that whatever horrors are headed our way, they are far enough in the future to make such a grim decision unnecessary. Full disclosure, I have 2 grown daughters. I love them more than anything else that has come along in my long life. And when we were pregnant with honorable daughter number 1, I was already having this debate with myself and with her mother. That was in 1987. At that time, the ozone hole was a growing threat. That was more than 30 years ago. I have told both of my daughters that I would not make the same decision today that I made in 1987 and again in 1992. It hurts them to hear it, and it hurts me deeply to say it to them. Here in Germany, where I live as an American refugee, the population has shrunk from 88 million at the time I first moved here in 1987 to 80 million today. Germans are afraid of becoming extinct as a national group. The German government pays people to have children through a generous program of financial support for young parents called Kindergeld. This is a government which appears, in some ways, to be pretty concerned about our planet's future, but it has obviously not connected the dots when it comes to actual human dealing with the actual environmental disaster in a future that may not be so far off. The governing coalition's most powerful political party, Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, places great value on family-friendly politics. The party and the government it led at the time moved to abandon nuclear energy and develop renewables after Fukushima. The CDU and the succeeding governments it has led since then have done some relatively progressive things in the environmental arena, although the current edition is backsliding badly at the moment. But to admit that the world may be a terrifying place by the time these babies are adults is simply out of the question for them. And it certainly will not help them or any other political party to win elections. Every day I see happy young women proudly pushing their new babies around our peaceful little village here in baby carriages and strollers. Some of them are Germans. Some of them are refugees and immigrants who appear to feel that they have finally found a safe place to live a normal life. And to a great many of both groups, a normal life means having babies. It is what they have always wanted. I look into the faces of these innocent new arrivals and I try to imagine what they will face in 30 years, even if Germany remains the island of relative affluence and economic stability which it is today. But for a vast number of Germans and Americans and people all over the world, a life without children would be incomplete. And therein lies the crux. Most of us who make the decision are thinking less about that new baby's future than about our own futures, our own happiness, our own sense of fulfillment. Of course we plan to do everything within our power to give that child a good life. Unfortunately, it no longer lies within our power to give those babies a secure future, as I see it. No amount of money in the bank or property amassed, no expensive education will keep the plastic out of the food chain or prevent the planet from overheating drastically. If such a thing was even possible at this late date, it would require a worldwide consensus and fast, decisive, emergency, mandatory action. Governments which routinely compete and make war or proxy war against one another would have to drop their jockeying for power and cooperate rapidly to save the planet. It is of course true that a great many young people are largely unaware of the alarming new scientific forecasts which have recently been published, along with urgent appeals from groups of major scientists urging the world leaders to take corresponding action. All of this is far beyond the extremely limited imaginative capacity of a great many of our fellow humans. Many of them, especially in the U.S., tend in any case to be highly skeptical of the whole thing, as if they do not label it outright as a hoax. What would it take to make such prospective parents see that the danger is real, urgent, and unparalleled in human history? To convince them that a baby born now, if not that baby, the next generation, is increasingly likely to face a terrible future? It would take the governments and media and authority figures willing to speak what they now know to be truth about what is highly likely and growing more so. It would require these governments and elites and their prostitute media to take off the happy face mask and make the real news the headline story, every day and every time. Gregory Barrett.
Thank you, Gregory Barrett. So folks, that concludes this part of our show, and I leave you with these thoughts. No government's going to force us to do anything to save our world. It's now up to us individually. There are those that say it's too late and shrug their shoulders and say, oh well, what the hell? And for those, it is too late. But for anyone who cares, whether it's too late or not, we need to play God. We need to do the best we can do by educating ourselves how we can change our lifestyle. If you are buying land and you want to build a beautiful house, make sure you build with sustainable products. Or get a trailer and live in that. Thank you so much for watching Meet America.